Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Howley here, and today marks the first episode of the Scholomance Academy card reviews. There's going to be a little series that I do just before the new expansion Scholomance Academy comes out. If you haven't seen the announcement trailer and you want to see my reaction to it, it was a very crazy time. I got really excited and really into it. If you want to see that, go check out my last video where I reacted to the announcement of this expansion. But today we're going to be going through all the cards that are being released in that announcement trailer and a couple more cards that were released afterwards as well, and give a little bit of an in-depth analysis on the card as well as a rating out of 10 at the end of each card. So I hope you guys enjoy, and let's just jump right into the cards today. Okay, so the first card that we're going to look at is the Cult NEOPHYTE, a new 2-mana 3/2 neutral card that reads, Battle Cry, your opponent's spells cost 1 more next turn. Now when you first look at this card, you say, okay, this is a 2-mana 3/2. That's a decent stat line. That's a standard 2-drop stat line. So it's a good stat line. And the effect is like a mini Lothep. Obviously, you guys, if you play Wild or if you've played Hearthstone for a long time, you will know that Lothep says your opponent's spells cost 5 more next turn. And that costs 5 mana. But this, for 2 mana, you can make the opponent's spells cost 1 more. The thing that's interesting with this card, though, is I'm trying to think what deck wants to play with it, right? The way I'm going to try and analyze a lot of these cards is, okay, do they fit into the tier 1 deck, a tier 2 deck? What deck do I think they fit into? And how powerful do I think that deck will then be? And do I think this card then creates a new archetype? And for both of those questions, I don't think this card really fits a purpose. I don't think it definitely doesn't create its own archetype. It's only a 2-mana 3/2, and I'm really unsure about whether to use this card in an aggressive deck. Maybe you want to just play it for tempo, and the increase of spell cost by 1 might prevent your opponent from playing certain removal spells into your aggressive board. Or maybe you want to use it in a control deck to kind of tech against the more spell heavy decks, such as Spell Druid, for example. I'm really not sure. I think this card, can fit into a lot of places, but can also not. It just really depends. So there's a lot of uncertainty with this card. And because of that, I'm going to give this card a 4 out of 10. I think it will be experimented in some decks, but when the meta settles after the expansion, I don't really think it's going to see much play, unfortunately. Okay, so the next card we're going to look at is the first dual class card of the expansion. Dual class cards are a new thing that's going to be, in Scholomance Academy, where there are going to be 40 of these cards that basically share 2 classes. And in this example, Devolving Missiles is going to be shared between Mage and Shaman, as you can see by the coloring of the card. And it reads, 1 mana, shoot 3 missiles at random enemy minions that transform them into ones that cost 1 less. So basically, it is the Devolve that can be used for both Mage and Shaman. I think this card is incredibly strong. If you look at it on the offset, it's basically Devolve that costs 1 less mana. But it can't devolve a whole board. The nice thing about Devolve is that if they have a whole board of 7 minions, you can devolve all of it. You can get rid of their effect, you can get rid of their death rattle, and you can make them cost 1 less. This card can't do that. This card can maximum do 3 minions on the opponent's side. However, it is 1 mana less, which is very influential. Going from 2 mana to 1 mana is literally half the mana. And also, it can shoot 3 missiles at the same target, which upon first reading this card, I didn't realize, but looking at it more deeply now, yeah, this card can actually hit. So if there's only 1 minion on the opponent's side, and let's say it's a 5-drop, if you cast Devolving Missiles, it will actually hit that 5-drop 3 times, making it into a 2-drop. And because of that, this card is extremely versatile. It can deal with wide boards, semi-wide boards, 3 to 4 minions. It can be good at that. Sometimes it will whiff. Sometimes it will hit the one you don't want it to hit. It can also be good against single target, and that's something that Devolve is never good against. If you had like a 6-drop, Devolve is always going to give you a 5-drop, but this can actually give you a 3-drop, which is insane. And the fact it's only 1 mana, and it's used in, the classes Mage and Shaman, where Mage obviously can make use of a lot of cheap spells and can discount spells as well, Sorcerer's Apprentice. And Shaman obviously, historically being good at devolving things, and can have a lot of spell synergy as well. I think this is a perfect fit. And because of all of that, I think I'm going to give this card a 7 out of 10, guys. I think this card is going to see a lot of play. It just depends if there's going to be a Mage or Shaman deck to go alongside it. But I think if there is a Mage deck, this card will go inside it. If there's a Shaman deck, I think it will also go inside it. If even if it's like an aggressive deck, if it's a control deck, this card fits every kind of archetype. So I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. The only reason I'm not giving it any higher is because I'm not sure if a mage or shaman deck will be successful in the expansion. That depends on all the other cards that are going to be released. So I'm going to give it a nice 7 out of 10. Okay, so the third card that we're going to look at today is the Diligent Note Taker, a shaman minion, 2 mana, 2/3, spell burst. Return the spell to your hand. So spell burst is a new keyword in Scholomance Academy. And basically what happens is when a minion has spell burst and you cast a spell, the spell burst effect will activate. So in this case, the spell burst effect is it returns the spell to your hand. Meaning that whenever you cast a spell, whatever spell you cast is basically going to get back to your hand. And the example they had in the announcement video was that they played Diligent Note Taker, then Lightning Storm. And it basically cast a Lightning Storm and then gave you another Lightning Storm into your hand. So obviously this minion is a very, value-driven minion. You can, play this, then play a spell and get another copy of it. It's very valuable because it allows you to play multiple copies of a card, potentially. And the fact that it's also a rare means you can play 2 copies of this. So you can actually chain a lot of different spells. And Shaman does have quite a few spells that you potentially want to kind of get back. I'm thinking Farsight. I'm thinking maybe like a Hex or something like that. Or even the new card, Devolving Missiles. So this card can be very versatile for sure. The problem that I have with this card is I'm trying to think what kind of deck really wants to play this. Is it an aggressive deck? 2 mana, 2/3. Not bad stat line. But you don't really want to play this on turn 2. You want to combo this with a spell later on in the game, I feel like, to have its full potential. Otherwise, you're really just playing a 2 mana 2/3 with no effect. And maybe in some sort of aggressive shaman deck, when you're playing Lava Burst and Lightning Bolts, you can get more of those into your hand. I can definitely see that. But the problem I have is that kind of deck going to be good in the meta? Is that kind of deck going to be, strong? And what tier is that going to be? And I think, some sort of aggro shaman might occur. There's a lot of overload synergy cards right now in the meta, and a lot of, spell, obviously Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt, I mentioned earlier. So I think that might be, maybe a tier 3 or tier 2 deck. And I don't really see this card being, it might be in some sort of control shaman as well, but I think it's more useful in an aggressive aspect. But because of that, I'm actually going to give this a 5 out of 10. I think it might, be in a tier 2 or tier 3 deck. I think you'll definitely see experimentation, but ultimately I think it will fall short of the other cards in this expansion. Okay, so now we have a Paladin card. First day of school. 0 mana. Add 2 random 1-cost minions to your hand. So firstly, it's 0 mana. That's always good for a Hearthstone card. 0 mana cards historically, always see play in some aspect in their lifetime in standard. If just thinking off the top of my head, you can combo this card with Exotic Mount Seller, for example, to just create a beast. And even if you play this on turn 1, you can immediately play one of the 1-cost minions that you get. So this is actually, it gives you 2 cards. It's a 1 card for 2 card trade, which is it's decent value. It's decent value. And the fact it's 0 can have some implications. However, because, I'm trying to think what kind of archetype wants this card, what kind of archetype can actually play this card. And I can't really think of one, to be honest. This is a Paladin card. What kind of Paladin card, as we know today, will want to play this card? Libran Paladin? Maybe. Some sort of aggressive Paladin that doesn't really exist right now. Yeah, but maybe it'll exist in the next expansion. I don't know. Like, Murlocs definitely doesn't want to play this. Libran Paladin probably doesn't want to play this. Even if you play Pure Paladin, I don't think you run this card. I don't think it's good enough for Pure Paladin. There's another card later on that you'll see that I think is really, really strong for Pure Paladin, but I don't think this card will fit into that archetype. And although it's decent value, I don't think you want to main deck this. I think this is maybe a decent spell to discover of something. Or it's a decent spell to kind of get and then play with Mount Seller. Maybe if you play a Libran Paladin, you want to play this card with Mount Seller. That could work, but I'm struggling to see that kind of work out. Paladin already not very strong. And I feel like if it wants to be stronger, it needs something more powerful than this. So because of all those reasons, I'm actually going to give this card a 4 out of 10. Okay, guys, next up we have a Priest Minion, the Frazzled Freshman. Love that name, and it's just a 1 mana 1/4. That's it. Standard 1 mana 1/4. This is pretty, new to Hearthstone. We never really see a 1 mana 1/4 just like with nothing. We obviously have that Ash Tongue card or whatever. That's the 1 mana 1/4, that damages you as the Warlock. Or for the Warlock, but this is just a standard 1 mana 1/4, no effect. And we know that historically Priest likes minions with high health. They prefer definitely with high health. Inner Fire is still in the standard, obviously. Divine Spirit did go out. This card would be absolutely insane in combo Priest, but Inner Fire is still there. You can then, have the buff card, like the Shadow Ascendant thing, the 3 mana 2/2 that buffs minions +2/+2. this card is very sticky. 4 health is very difficult to deal with on turn 1 for your opponent, so this is very likely to stick. So if a card comes out where it's like you play this on turn 1, then you have something to play on turn 2 that buffs this card can be good. See Blizzard trying to push Tempo Priest, you know, into the meta. And currently, Tempo Priest is absolutely terrible. I think this card in a vacuum is very strong. It's a 1-mana 1/4, but I'm kind of struggling to think about what kind of deck wants this, right? The Priest decks right now are Galakrond Priest or Highlander Priest, and they definitely don't want to run a vanilla 1/4 that does nothing. They want cards that that have an effect, for example. But if a Tempo Priest deck does come to the forefront, which it might do because Blizzard does like to push, you know, Tempo Priest, and we've seen that with the, you know, the new Priest Hall of Fame kind of thing that happened last expansion. If a Tempo Priest does come to the forefront, I think this card will be fantastic in it. 1/4 is just amazing stats, and because of that, I have to give this a decent rating. I'm gonna give this a 6. All right, I'm gonna give this a 6, guys. I think it might be in a tier 2 deck. I think Tempo Priest might be tier 2. That's assuming that they do print more cards, but I think they will. So because of that, I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. Okay, next up here we have the Paladin card. Goody, 2 shields, love the name, love the pun. A 3-mana 4/2 Divine Shield with Spell Burst, gain Divine Shield. So another Spell Burst card. I think this card is very strong. Personally, when I looked at it, when I saw it in the announcement trailer, if you want to see my reaction to it, I was like, holy crap, this is insane. This is a 3-mana 4/2 Divine Shield, which already I think is very good. We have currently got a card, the Scarlet Crusader or something, that is a 3-mana 3/1. A Divine Shield, and obviously that doesn't see play, but this is literally a better card in every single way compared to that. And the fact that it has Spell Burst, gain Divine Shield again can be very influential. It's a 3-mana with 4 attack, which means you can take a lot of trades, and it has Divine Shield. So if you play it, it could take maybe a possible trade into a bigger minion, and then if you play a spell, it will gain the Divine Shield back. I think that's pretty valuable, and I think this fits directly into Libram Paladin. This is definitely better than some of the cards that are already in that deck. The deck already runs a lot of spells in terms of Libram Wisdom, you know, in terms of maybe like Consecration or whatever. They run a lot of spells. So I think this is a perfect fit for Libram Paladin. But now the question is, okay, what tier do I think Libram Paladin is going to be? Libram Paladin is already a decent deck. Now with the nerfs coming out to Demon Hunter, you know, and the, you know, meta slowing down a little bit, I think Libram Paladin can have its place. Libram Pure Paladin, that is. So I'm thinking maybe low tier 2 for next expansion. So because of that, and because of the fact that I think this card is just good as a general minion as well, in a vacuum, I'm actually going to give this a 7 out of 10, guys. I think this is going to be, you know, definitely in Pure Paladin, I think Pure Paladin is going to be a tier 2. I think this is just a generally good minion. So yeah, 7 out of 10 from me. Goody, 2 shields. Great card. Fantastic card. Okay, so this is now the insane Druid and Shaman dual class card, Lightning Bloom. 0 mana, gain 2 mana crystals this turn. Overload 2. Guys, this is pre-nerf Innervate. I didn't play Hearthstone back in the day, but I've heard stories about how, you know, Innervate for Druid was so insane. It was basically exactly the same as this without the overload, and obviously the overload does suck. But this card opens so many doors for combo decks, for aggressive decks, you know, for like aggressive, you know, spell-driven Shaman decks who want to just burn the opponent's face. For combo kind of Druid decks, Druid already wants to ramp, and this allows Druid to have access to more mana. This card is absolutely bonkers. I think this card is just, it's completely amazing. 5 stars. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. Okay, I'm giving this 9 out of 10. I know that's a bold statement, but I think this card is going to be absolutely insane. Just think about the Spell Druid currently. Would Spell Druid love to play a 0 mana, gain 2 mana crystals this turn? Yes. It doesn't care about the overload because it wants to get its amazing tempo turn with Mount Seller immediately. And then next turn it has less mana, okay, but you're already ramped. So losing that 2 mana, you're just going to be on the same mana as your opponent anyway because you've probably played an Overgrowth. So you're not actually losing too much. If this card was in right now, you could get Mount Seller off on turn 7. You could then play this. And then you could play like maybe a Crystal Power, maybe a Power of the Wild. This card is absolutely bonkers, you know, already in Spell Druid. And it could even create some more archetypes. If there's some sort of combo deck that requires 12 or 14 mana. Yeah, Lightning Bloom, hello, you know. As I said, it's going to be good in aggressive Shaman decks. I want to burn you down. This card is top tier. Only reason I'm not giving it a 10 out of 10 is I don't think it's, you know, really like defining an archetype. I think it's a very strong card that can go into a lot of different decks, hence why I'm giving it a 9. But I just don't think it's archetype defining. And that's what 10 out of 10 really means. It means, you know, it creates its own archetype. So because of that, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10, but incredibly strong card. And I won't be surprised if this sees a nerf. Honestly, I think this is super strong. I hope I'm not wrong about this. I'm gonna look like an idiot, but I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. Okay, now we move on to the Druid card, Nature Studies. I think each of the classes are gonna get a Studies card. So this is the Druid one, and it's a 1 mana, discover a spell, your next one costs 1 less. Brilliant card. Brilliant card. You know, discovering a spell for 1 mana historically has been great. You see, you know, the likes of Magic Trick, the likes of Arcane Breath currently see play. And they've just always been kind of good when they were released, because, you know, discovering a spell for 1 mana is just strong. But also, this card says your next one costs 1 less. So not only can you discover a spell, but then you can immediately play that spell for less because of the discount. And once again, I'm going to turn your attention to Spell Druid. Would this card see play in Spell Druid currently? Yes. And Spell Druid is not going away next expansion. No, none of the cards are rotating or anything like that. It's already a tier 1 deck. And this card, along with the other card that we just saw, the Lightning Bloom, 100% see play in Spell Druid currently. I mean, it's a 1 mana card, it's cheap, it discounts, you know, your next spells, making that even cheaper, so you can summon more beasts with Mount Seller. You know, this even works with KELESETH if that kind of deck comes back. I think this card is insane. And because of that, I'm going to give this a very high rating. I'm actually going to give this an 8 out of 10. Not as high as the Lightning Bloom, just because I don't think, obviously Lightning Bloom is dual class. I think Lightning Bloom probably be used in more decks. I think this card is going to be in Spell Druid 100% of the time, and I do think Spell Druid is going to be tier 1, hence the 8 out of 10. But I don't think it really sees played outside of Spell Druid or outside of Mount Seller Druid. So because of that, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. But still, this card is insane. And Druid already getting some really strong cards. So, yeah. Okay, now we have the Warrior Legendary RATTLEGORE. 9 mana, 9/9, Death Rattle. Resummon this with -1/-1. Firstly, amazing design. I love this design. If you guys are not aware about how this works, whenever RATTLEGORE dies for the first time, it's going to come back as an 8/8, right? And when it dies again, it's going to come back as a 7/7, and so on until it becomes a 0/0 and it dies, you know, because it's just a 0/0 card. So the design is great on this card. Does that mean it's any good though? Unfortunately for RATTLEGORE, I don't think it really is. Nowadays in Hearthstone, you can't really afford to just play a 9 mana card does nothing immediately onto the board, and that's what RATTLEGORE does. You know, you play it for 9 mana. You're probably going to burn that extra 1 mana as well, because, you know, that's kind of awkward to spend. And you're just playing a 9 mana 9/9 that doesn't have taunt, that doesn't have rush. You know, it's not really doing anything onto the board. If your opponent has lethal, they could just avoid this RATTLEGORE entirely, negating its effect and just killing you. So unless you can cheat this card out in some way, if you have to pay 9 mana for this card, I think it's kind of bad, honestly, because it's just not doing anything, right? With so many rush minions right now and so many, you know, taunt minions in the game, just a base 9 mana 9/9 doesn't really do much. I know it has tremendous value with the Death Rattle, but yeah, I mean, silence or any sort of hex or polymorph effect just completely negates it. And obviously those are not very prevalent in the meta right now, but they can be after the next expansion. So ultimately, I think this card is way too slow, and I don't really see a warrior deck that wants to play this card. Like, even a control warrior just doesn't really want to use this card. I don't think it's any good. So for that, I'm actually going to give this a 3 out of 10. I think it will see some experimentation. It might see play in some sort of meme deck, but it's not going to see, you know, wide play in the constructed meta. Okay, now we move on to the first dual-class legendary of this new set, SHAN'DO WILDCLAW. It is a Hunter Druid dual-class legendary that reads 3 mana 3/3, choose one. Give beasts in your deck +1/+1, or transform into a copy of a friendly beast. Okay, so firstly, this is a very interesting card. It's basically a KELESETH for 3 mana, but it only targets beasts, right? That's the one side of that card if you choose that option. Alternatively, it is a Faceless Manipulator for 3 mana, but only for friendly beasts. So it's kind of like KELESETH and Faceless Manipulator put together, but not just the complete 2 cards put together. Like, taking a little bit away from KELESETH, a little bit away from Faceless Manipulator, and, you know, like, they have a little love child, and it equals SHAN'DO WILDCLAW. But even with that, because this card is so versatile, I think this card will see a play in a lot of different decks. I know currently Hunter doesn't really have a beast deck, but if they do release more beasts, you know, maybe some sort of mid-range Hunter deck can exist with beasts. And if it plays beasts, you know, any Hunter deck that plays beasts from now on for the next 2 years will want to play this card, because, you know, if you draw us on turn 3, it's just basically a KELESETH buff. And yeah. And also, if you don't draw it on turn 3 and draw it in the late game, you can just use the transform version of this card and transform a copy of a beast, maybe a Tundra Rhino, for example. And even in Highlander Hunter now, you can play on turn 10, Dino Tamer Bran, SHAN'DO WILDCLAW for 18 bursts with King Crush. So just, I mean, I think this card 100% goes into Highland the Hunter, because I don't think you mind playing it on turn 3, even if it's just a 3-mana 3/3 that gives some beasts, maybe 2 or 3 beasts, but that's still positive effect. But the combo ability to have this with King Crush is absolutely insane. You could maybe combo with like Zix or Apex Predator, maybe even like a Diving Griffin. I don't know. You can combo with so many things. I think this card is super versatile. In Hunter, in Druid, it could possibly be good as well. We have Winged Guardian, which I think is a beast currently. So that's another 10 mana combo that you can do. Druid does play around with Beast historically as well, so maybe more Beasts will be printed for Druid. And then this card will see playing Druid as well. So very versatile card. I think it's very strong. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. I think it will see play in Highland the Hunter, and it might create a Beast Hunter deck or a Beast Druid deck if more Beasts are released. At the moment, though, it seems unlikely. That's why I'm only giving it a 7. But yeah, 7 out of 10 for SHAN'DO WILDCLAW. I think it's a very cool card and a very cool design as well. Okay, guys, the next card is Transfer Student, a very, very cool card that is actually already out in Hearthstone. Everybody gets 2 free copies of this if you log on right now. So if you haven't logged on since the patch, log on and acquire your Transfer Student card. Now, this card is very, very interesting. It says it's a 2-mana 2/2 that has different effects based on which game board you're on. So there are so many game boards in Hearthstone. Obviously, it changes. It's random every single game, and depending on which game board you have, Transfer Student will have a certain effect. I'm going to pop an image of what the effects are right now. So feel free to pause the video and look at all the effects. I'm not going to go into all of the effects because that would just take too long. That's going to be a video in itself if I do that. So yeah, those are all the effects. You can see them right now. And I would just say that, you know, having a brief look at them, some of them are pretty good. Some of them are kind of bad. But overall, the effects are pretty positive. The issue with this card is RNG based. It's very random. So I don't know if this will see competitive play, because sometimes, you know, some of the effects that you do want, you won't always get. You'll get them like 1 out of 7 times or something. So because of the inconsistency of this card, I don't think this card is actually going to be run. I don't think it will actually see play. It's a very fun card though, and some of the effects are very strong, for sure. But I just think it's hard to put this into a deck just because you're not sure about what game board you're going to get every single game. So for that reason, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10. I think it's a fun card, and it's a well-designed card. It's a very interesting card. But because it's RNG focused, it won't really see competitive play. But I think people will just stick them into decks. I've already done that for my stream yesterday. I saw a lot of people on ladder playing with this card just for fun. So for the fun aspect of this card, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10. But I don't think it's competitive at all. Okay, so now we have a big warrior card, Troublemaker. 8 mana, 6/8. At the end of your turn, summon 2 3/3 ruffians that attack random enemies. So when I first looked at this card, I thought it was kind of weak. You know, I saw it as an 8 mana 6/8 that kind of just deals 3 damage to 2 things. And that doesn't seem that good. It's kind of slow. You know, I couldn't really think of a warrior deck that wants to use this card. However, looking at this card, you know, after I spent more time looking into this card, I've actually realized that it's very, very strong. If you look at it, you know, just based on if you play it on an empty board, it is a 8 mana 6/8 that summons 6/6 worth of stats, making it a 8 mana 12/14. And 6 of those attack stats have charge or rush. So if you look at it that way, that is incredibly strong. This card can go face. The 2 ruffians, it says, can attack random enemies, which means it can go face. So playing on empty board is basically playing, as I said, a 12/14 worth of stats and 6 damage to face. And I think that's a great finisher for a lot of like aggressive warrior decks. Now, at the moment, I'm going to be honest, there's not a warrior deck that really wants to use this card. You know, if you look at Enrage Warrior, Tempo Warrior, right now, that all of the 30 cards are pretty set. You know, they don't really want to, you know, they can't really afford to use this card, honestly. And any sort of Control Warrior, I don't really see this working in a Control Warrior, just because it doesn't really do anything in terms of value. It's a lot of tempo. So if some sort of Tempo Warrior does come into the forefront, I think this card will be very strong. It is very strong. It has just a lot of stats, and a lot of the stats are instantly just going to be played on the board. It can also clear a board with the 3/3s. It is a little bit random, so sometimes when you want to clear a board, it's going to go face and vice versa. But yeah, so because of that, it's going to be a little bit weaker just because of the randomness, and because of the fact that it doesn't really see play in a current warrior deck. I can't really give this that high of a rating, but I do think it's a strong card, so I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Okay, almost done, guys. Couple more cards to go. Next up, we have Wand Thief, which is another dual class card for Mage and Rogue. and it reads, a 1 mana 1/2 combo, discover a mage spell. I think this card is insane. Will this see play in the rogue deck? 100% yes. 1 mana 1/2 is decent stats. You know, combo, obviously rogue love combo cards. They love cheap cards to get, you know, buffs on Edwin Van Cleef or Questing Adventurer. And discovering a mage spell is insane. Like, being able to have mage spells in rogue, you know, having fireballs, having frostbolts, having more damage to go with the eviscerate, or having board clears, which rogue, you know, historically hasn't really had. The ability for you to discover that, and the fact that it's kind of hidden to your opponent, is insanely strong. So for rogue, this card is great. Now what about for mage? Again, it's just a 1 mana discover a mage spell. As I said before, Arcane Breath sees play. Magic Trick kind of sees play. It's just decent, and it's also a 1/2 body. Okay, yes, you have to combo it, so that's kind of an issue for mage, because mage kind of plays expensive cards a lot of the time. So you can't just play this on turn 1 and have the spell, have the discover go off. So a little bit weaker for mage, really strong for rogue. So because of that, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. I think it's a really strong card. We'll see play in rogue decks for sure. I'm not sure what rogue decks are going to look like after the expansion, but I think this card is great in rogue. And in mage, it can definitely see play. Or even if you discover it sometimes off like Font of Power, you're not going to be disappointed, because you just get more value. So it's a very strong card. I'm going to give it a 7. That's an 8. A 7 out of 10. Okay, so we have another spell burst card now called the Wretched Tutor. It's a neutral card, 4 mana 2/5, spell burst, deal 2 damage to all other minions. So we now have a neutral AoE card, which is pretty interesting, giving all classes a way to actually deal AoE damage, deal 2 damage as an AoE effect. The issue I have with this card is that it's pretty expensive, and it doesn't really have the best tempo when you play on turn 4. 4 mana 2/5 is pretty weak stats. It does have 5 health, so it's kind of difficult to kill, but it's really weak tempo-wise. But even if you want to combo this card late game with a spell, 4 mana is very expensive. So it's going to be difficult to combo this with any kind of spell. You know, like, I'm thinking like Flame Strike, you can't do that. Maybe Blizzard, but that's 10 mana, and you're only dealing 4 damage AoE. I mean, just play Flame Strike, right? It's a bit awkward. This card is a bit awkward, and it can only go off once with the Spell Burst. Yeah, you can't really combo it with other cards on the same turn. It kind of feels bad to play on turn 4. I mean, maybe you're trying to set it up for turn 5 clear. Maybe play this on turn 4. You say, okay, my opponent can't deal with it. Then you play a spell on turn 5 and clear the board and deal more AoE damage. That can be good, but I feel like that's just a little bit too, you know, it's a 2-card combo. It's kind of clunky to have in your hand. If you don't have the removal, it feels bad just to play this on its own. So yeah, this card definitely feels bad. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. I don't think you'll really see play in any deck. It might get experimented with at the start of the expansion, but eventually people will probably realize that there are just better options out there. And the final card for this video is the ONYX MAGESCRIBE. It's a 6 mana 4/9 spell burst. Add 2 random spells from your class to your hand. Okay, so a very big minion. It's a dragon as well. Sorry, I forgot to mention that it's a dragon. So the fact it's a dragon is definitely a plus for it. This can definitely see play in decks such as like maybe Highlander Hunter that needs more dragons to activate its dragon cards. Maybe like Highlander Mage, for example. Just because it's a dragon. It has a decent stat line. 6 mana 4/9 is not bad. A total of 13 stats for 6 mana. It's kind of average. I think that's like decent. It's not great, but like you don't mind playing this. You know, it has 9 health, so it's very difficult to deal with. 4 attack, so I guess technically good against Priest. And yeah, I think this is a very strong arena card. I don't really play arena, but I'm just gonna have to mention that this is a very strong arena card because it has spell burst, add 2 random spells to your hand. That's a lot of value. If you play this on turn 7, for example, with the 1 mana spell, you're gonna play this, you're gonna get the spell, and then you're gonna get 2 other spells from your class. If you play this on turn 6, it's probably gonna stick because it has 9 health, and then you can, you know, play a spell next turn to generate more value. The issue with this, once again, is that it doesn't have taunt or rush. So when you play this immediately, it doesn't really do anything onto the board. It's just kind of a pile of stats. So if you're looking to survive, this doesn't really help you. It doesn't have taunt, right? Like if you're gonna die, they could just go over the top of this and kill you. And it doesn't have rush, so it can't impact the board immediately. This is definitely a value card, so I don't really see this thing playing like aggressive decks. Maybe in some sort of control deck that wants to kind of like generate more cards, generate more value. Quest Mage in Wild definitely will, you know, be good for this card. But in Standard, which I'm mainly going to be talking about Standard in these deck reviews, I don't think this card really gets there. It's got decent stats, a decent effect, but it just doesn't do enough for the current meta. So because of that, I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10. Okay, so that's going to be it, guys, from episode 1 of my card review for the new expansion of Scholomance Academy. Hope you guys have enjoyed. Let me know what you think about all of these cards in the comments down below. Do you agree with my ratings? What rating would you give them out of 10 and why? Let me know in the comments below. Let's start a discussion. And also shout out to Hearthstone Top Decks for providing all of these images for these cards. I will leave a link in the description to that website so you guys go check out the whole card list for yourself as well. But without further ado, that's going to be it from me. It's been your boy Howley. I will see you on another video very, very soon. Stay tuned for more card reviews. I'm very excited. I love card review season. It's my favorite time of year. And I hope you guys will join me for the next episode. Peace out.